All right, everybody should have your quiz from yesterday out on your desk. If not, let's pause real quick and make sure that that is the case so everybody is ready to review. All right, so I was up at the school yesterday. I talked to Miss Zinke and Miss Carter about, kind of how their students have been doing with this stuff. And I've gotten some emails and some messages about from some of you about your concern with you're not really grasping it. Miss Zinke and Miss Carter both told me that their students were kind of struggling with some of this stuff as well. Okay, so we're going to back up a little bit, and we're going to go through this quiz together, one question at a time, and then I'm going to have you work. Excuse me. I'm going to have you work in partners today on these concepts as well as the concepts from section 3.3 on rate of change and slope. Okay, so we're going to kind of pump the brakes a little bit, go back, and make sure that everybody is grasping everything before we move forward. Because as always, we're going to be building on this in our next unit, so it's very important that we grasp this before moving forward. Okay, so numbers 1 and 2, my directions say to determine whether each equation is linear, write yes or no, okay, and then if yes, we want it written in standard form. Okay, so the first thing I'm looking at is this a linear equation? Okay, well, if it's a linear equation, then it's possible to be written in standard form. Well, for me to know if something can be written in standard form, it's fairly important that I know what standard form is. So you should have this in your notes. If you don't, or if you feel the urge to jot this in the margin here, okay, this is your standard form. It has to be exactly in this order: x, then y, set equal to some number, to be considered in standard form. So for instance, if I had this, okay, the commutative property tells me that I can take this and switch it. Okay, that's what I did right here. I just switched the position of my ax and my by term. So these two equations are equivalent. They're exactly the same. But this is not in standard form because it doesn't meet this criteria. Okay, similarly, if I had this, c is equal to ax plus by. Okay, again, this is equivalent. All I've done is taken what's on the left side and what's on the right side and switched it. This is fine. As far as mathematically, these two things are equivalent. But again, this is not standard form. It has to be written your x term first, your y term second, equal sign, then a number. If it is not written in this form, then it is not considered to be standard form. So, for number 1, is it possible for me to take this equation, rearrange it into standard form? And the answer to this would be no. Why? Because I have an xy term there. Okay, look at your standard form. Do you see an xy term here? No, you see an x term and then separately a y term over here. They're not being multiplied together in my standard form. So this is what causes number 1 to be a no. And in this case, because of the way your directions were worded, all you needed to write was just no. The other thing that we talked about just while we're on the subject is if you have anything raised to a power other than 1, okay, so x squared, cubed, y squared, or cubed, any power greater than 1 is going to cause an equation to not be linear. So those are kind of the two things we're going to be looking for right now: variables being multiplied together, or more than 2 variables, and then exponents greater than 1. All right, for number 2, I have a y variable here, an x variable here, and a constant. So I have all the pieces that I need. I don't have any exponents greater than 1, and I don't have any variables being multiplied together. So my next step is going to be put it into standard form. Okay, I've already determined that yes, this could be written in standard form because I see all the pieces that I have here that I need to write it. So I'm going to say yes. And to write this in standard form, I need this term to be over here. Well, how do I take a term and move it from one side of the equation to the other? I subtract it. I take it away from the right side and move it to the left side. To get rid of it on the right, I have to subtract. If I subtract it on the right, I have to also subtract on the left. So now on the left side of my equation, I've got my negative 2x plus 4y is equal to 8. I can't combine an x and a y term, and this is in my x term first, y term second, constant term third form. So this is in standard form. This is my answer here, the yes and the equation. And just as a side note here, your a would be equal to negative 2 here, your b would be equal to a positive 4, and your c would be equal to 8. And a little bit down the road, being able to do this is going to be pretty helpful. For this particular test, I'm not going to specifically ask you to identify the A, B, and C values once you get something in standard form, but just know that that's eventually going to be a skill that you're going to need to have. Okay, number 3, I'm rewriting the existing equation in standard form. So it's basically the way that it's presented, it's already told me that this is linear because it's telling me to write it in standard form. If it wasn't linear, then I wouldn't be able to do that. So I've got my x term on the left, my y term on the right. I want to take my y term, move it from the right side to the left side. I do this by subtracting it. That gets rid of it on the right. So now on the left, I've got 3/4 x minus y, then my equal sign, and then my 8. And again, a here would be 3/4. B would be, there's always an understood coefficient of 1 there, so this is a negative 1. C value would be 8. Okay, and that's really all there is to standard form for now. All right, number 4, this is a couple units ago. Not sure how many. Maybe 2, I think 2, maybe 3 units ago. All this is solving an equation for a specific variable. Okay? I want to first isolate the variable term and then get rid of the coefficient of 4. It doesn't say anything about standard form or anything like that. Okay? I'm solving for y. So to do that, again, first I need to get the 4y by itself. That means I need to get rid of the 2x on the left by subtracting it. So it's going to go away there, leave me with 4y is equal to, and you can either write this as negative 2x plus 16, or you can write it as 16 minus 2x. Doesn't really matter because it's not asking you for a specific form here. Since I'm solving for y, I need to get rid of this coefficient on the variable. Undo multiplication by dividing. If I divide one thing in an equation by something, I have to divide everything in an equation by something. So 4 divided by 4 is 1y. Negative 2 over 4 reduces to negative 1/2. And 16 over 4 reduces to 4. And again, guys, this is a couple units ago. This is nothing new. That's review. Okay, but we need to be able to do this in order to do what we need to do in number 6. Okay, so that's kind of why that's stuck in here in this quiz. If you're wondering, well, why am I doing something on here that's from 2 units ago. It's because we're going to use this skill in number 6. Alright, for numbers 5 and 6, we had a graphic organizer on this that we did last week. I don't remember the day, okay, but on your graphic organizer it says graphing linear equations. Then you've got intercepts on, I think, the right side, and using a table on the left side. So hopefully you haven't lost that. Maybe you want to kind of dig that out. I'll give you a second if you want to pause here and get that out to kind of use as a reference as we go over these. Okay, so to find or to graph using my intercepts, obviously I'm going to need those intercepts if I'm going to graph using them. And to find an x-intercept, I plug in 0 for y. To find a y-intercept, I plug in 0 for x. And we talked about why that is. Okay, just kind of reviewing here, an x-intercept is the point on the graph where I cross the x-axis. Okay, well, if I'm on the x-axis, that means I've not went anywhere up or down. So my y value is always going to be 0. Okay, I'm only moving left to right. I'm not moving up and down. Similarly, for a y-intercept, I'm not going anywhere left or right. I'm only moving up or down. So my x value for a y-intercept is always going to be 0. So that's what allows me to find my intercepts the way that I do. Okay, so first, we'll just kind of randomly work around the page here. Finding my x-intercept, I'm going to be plugging in 0 for y in this equation. So you've got 2x minus y, which we're plugging in 0 here for y. And then I'm solving the resulting equation. Okay, well, 2x minus 0 is 2x. 2 comes down. Divide by 2 on both sides. X is equal to 1. Okay, so we talked about for an x-intercept, you can either write the coordinate. I plugged in 0 for y, got 1 back out for x, so there's your ordered pair. Or you can just say 1. And it's understood that the y value that corresponds to that is going to be 0. One thing that I kind of like to do for these, and for those of you that are kind of visual, you can, let me get that back up there. You can maybe use this. Hey, let's imagine that this circle is your thumb. Okay, so I'm going to make it a little bit smaller here. So take your thumb, and when I plug in 0 for any value, it's going to get rid of that value in the equation, right? Because if I'm multiplying it by something, anything times 0 is 0. If I'm subtracting it from something, then it's not going to change that value. Okay, so plugging in 0 really doesn't change anything about the equation other than it's getting rid of the x or the y. So take your thumb and just cover up the variable that you're plugging in 0 for. Okay, see how what I have left right here is just the 2x is equal to 2? Okay, so take your thumb and cover that up and then solve the resulting equation. That's plugging in 0 for y. Okay, plugging in 0 for x, take your thumb, cover up the 2x term, and then look what you're left with. You got negative y equals 2. You're going to solve that equation and get y is equal to negative 2. Okay, so that would be your y-intercept. And I'll go through and work that out for you, but this is just something that maybe if you're a more visual person, maybe this will help you out a little bit. And I'm coming up on my 15 minutes here, so I'm going to go ahead and switch to another video, so just hang with me real quick.